A programmer stares at a bug for 2 hours. No progress, no new information. Then, on the 2 hour and 11-minute mark, without warning, the answer arrives, fully formed, and they can't explain exactly how they got there. That gap between stuck and solved, with nothing visible happening in between, is one of the most studied and least understood moments in cognitive science. Today, we're breaking down what's actually happening inside your brain during that gap, and why solving genuinely hard problems changes you differently than solving easy ones ever could. Let's start with the reveal. Researchers studying insight problem solving have found that hard problems, the kind that resist a clean step-by-step solution, activate a completely different brain process than routine problems do. Think of it like the difference between walking a familiar route home, which your brain runs almost on autopilot, versus being dropped in an unfamiliar city with no map. The first barely registers as effort. The second forces your brain to build something new, a mental structure that didn't exist before you got lost. A landmark study from Northwestern University, led by Mark Jung-Beeman, used EEG and fMRI to capture people's brains at the exact moment of an aha insight. The flash where a hard problem suddenly resolves. What they found was a sudden burst of gamma wave activity in the right anterior temporal lobe, a region associated with combining distantly related pieces of information, right before the solution consciously appeared. That burst happened roughly 300 milliseconds before people could even report having the answer. Their brain solved the problem before they knew they'd solved it. Here's the picture worth holding on to. Easy problems get solved through what's basically a straight line, point A to point B, using paths your brain has already built. Hard problems get solved through something closer to lightning finding a new route between two clouds, connecting regions that don't normally talk directly because the straight line simply doesn't exist yet. This connects to something we've covered before with the expertise compression, but here's the layer specific to difficulty itself. Every time you genuinely struggle with a hard problem, not skim it, not pattern match it to something familiar, actually struggle, your brain is forced to build a new connection between regions that weren't previously linked. Easy problems reinforce existing pathways. Hard problems build new ones. This is why 10 easy problems rarely teach you as much as one genuinely hard one, even though the easy ones might feel more productive in the moment. Now, here's the myth-busting twist. It would be easy to assume the goal then is to seek out maximum difficulty constantly. The harder, the better. The research complicates that significantly. Psychologist John Sweller's work on cognitive load theory found that difficulty only produces this kind of brain growth within a specific zone, hard enough to force your brain past its existing pathways, but not so hard that working memory simply collapses under the load. Push past that ceiling, and the struggle stops building anything. It just produces frustration and eventually disengagement. The brain doesn't grow from difficulty itself. It grows from difficulty it can just barely, effortfully handle. There's a physical piece worth naming here too. Neuroimaging studies on skill acquisition have found that repeatedly solving problems inside that effective difficulty zone increases white matter integrity, the actual wiring along the specific pathways being exercised. This is the same myelination process we've discussed with other skills. Faster, more efficient signal transmission, built specifically along the routes forced open by genuine struggle. A brain that regularly solves hard problems isn't just accumulating knowledge. It's physically restructuring the connections between regions that used to work in isolation. Here's the honest complication though. Not all difficulty is created equal, and this matters more than most people realize. A problem that's hard because it's genuinely novel, no clean existing pathway to reuse, produces this kind of growth. A problem that's hard purely because it's tedious or badly explained, or missing information you shouldn't have to guess at, mostly just produces stress without the accompanying benefit. Researchers call this the difference between germane load, effort that builds understanding, and extraneous load, effort wasted on confusion that has nothing to do with the actual problem. A genuinely hard bug builds your brain. A badly documented, poorly specified bug mostly just burns you out. So, here's the truth all of this points to. The 2 hours you spent stuck on that bug weren't wasted time before the real work happened at minute 111. They were the actual mechanism. Your brain was quietly forcing open a new connection the entire time, mostly outside conscious awareness, and the moment it finally arrived wasn't luck arriving late. It was construction finishing on schedule. This is also why the specific problems that felt hardest early in your career tend to be the ones you can barely remember struggling with now. Not because you got smarter in some vague sense, because your brain built a direct route where there used to be nothing but static. The uncomfortable, useful implication here is that avoiding difficulty, reaching for the easier problem, the familiar pattern, the well-trodden path isn't just slower. It's a brain that stops building new connections and starts merely reinforcing old ones. Comfortable work keeps you competent. Difficult work, the right amount of it, is the only thing that's ever actually built the wiring you now rely on without thinking. What's the hardest problem you've ever solved? The one that genuinely changed how you think afterward? Tell me about it in the comments.